So I want to thank Copwatch, I want to thank the Oscar Grant Committee, I want to thank everybody that was in this for allowing me to come up here and do this presentation. So what I'm going to speak to you about is, I know you probably heard about the city of Oakland using mutual aid to stop protesters, to get rid of the camp of Occupy Oakland. I'll explain what that is, what mutual aid is, how it works, and how it was used. And then I'm down to speak, if you haven't heard about a crowd control policy that the city of Oakland Police Department is facing numerous lawsuits for violating this crowd control policy that was enacted by the judge in 2003. And then I'm going to speak briefly about the oversight of the federal government, of the federal courts for the O.P.D. in court. So mutual aid, there's a master mutual aid agreement, a California master mutual aid agreement that was actually written in 1950 by the governor there. It explains what mutual aid is. It says, California's Disaster and Civil Defense Master Mutual Aid Agreement. This agreement made and entered into by and between the state of California and its various departments and agencies and various political subdivisions, municipals, corporations, and other public agencies of the state of California. Whereas it is necessary that all the resources and facilities of the state, its various departments and agencies, and all its political subdivisions, municipal corporations, and other public agencies be made available to prevent and combat the effect of disaster which may result from such calamities as flood, fire, earthquake, pestilence, war, sabotage, and riot. It is desirable that each of the parties should voluntarily aid and assist each other in the event that a disaster should occur by the interchange of services and facilities, including but not limited to fire, police, medical health, communication, transportation services, and facilities to cope with the problems of rescue, relief, evacuation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction which would arise in the event of a disaster. It is necessary and desirable that the cooperative agreement be executed for the interchange of such mutual aid on a local, county-wide, regional, statewide, and interstate basis. So basically what this is saying that it's the law enforcement, the mutual aid is used every day. Like if they need somebody to control a crowd that's forming, and when the police are doing their job, if they need a rescue that has to cross county lines, it's used every day. But the one that I'm really concentrating on is the one that was used by the O.P.D. It's a law enforcement mutual aid, where the city chief of the O.P.D. can declare that he needs help, and they call other police departments to come help them out with it. So, mutual aid is broken down into 4 parts. It's, you have the city, then you have an operational area which comprises of each county in California, and then you have regional areas which California is broken into 7 regional areas. And, I'm going to be showing this all later. I'm just trying to give you openings of what I'm talking about. So the first part of the mutual aid is the city of Oakland. Okay. The city police departments are charged with the responsibility for the maintenance of law and order and protection of life and property within the municipal geographic boundaries. The chief of police is the official responsible for determining the magnitude of a law enforcement emergency within the jurisdiction, the extent of locally committed resources, and the necessity for requesting law enforcement mutual aid, which is our intern chief police, Howard Jordan. So he requested mutual aid for October 25th, 14th of November, and November 2nd, general strike. The reason he requested this is because he said that the camp was unhealthy, that they basically just wanted to get rid of the protesters. So whenever the emergency is declared, it's the police that has it's the chief of police who's in charge of calling for mutual aid. Okay, the operational area of mutual aid is the county, along with all the political subdivisions within that county constitutes an operational area. The operational area is the next level of law enforcement mutual aid responsibility. The operational area is a composite of its political subdivisions, municipalities, contract cities, special districts, and county agencies. The county sheriff is the operational area law enforcement mutual aid coordinator. So the sheriff of Alameda County, he's the one who, when Chief Howard Jordan wants to call for mutual aid, he has to contact the Alameda County sheriff. He's the one that coordinates this mutual aid, right? So this is Alameda County Sheriff And if you look at the City of Oakland website, they have a piece on there thanking him. The City of Oakland deeply appreciates the support of the Alameda County Sheriff, Gregory Hearn, for coordinating and the request for mutual aid. So he's the one in charge of bringing mutual aid to the city. So the next slide is going to show you these public information requests for. This is the officers that came from different counties to help get rid of the Occupy Oakland camp. All these officers were tense. If you look, this is Alameda County Sheriff. The first one, he had 50 deputies with 4 squads. The Berkeley PD had 3 squads with 13 officers. You see Berkeley PD that came out on October 25th with 13 officers. Hayward Police had 25 officers. Fremont PD had 12 officers. And so on, the list goes on. City of Oakland is responsible for paying for these officers when they come and help with mutual aid. I got a cost for Alameda County just alone is $1,000 per share. So, that's just for the 25th that day. It's a lot of money. The City of Oakland could get reimbursed from the federal government grants they have.
$1,000 for 1 day per cop?
Yeah, per share. Yeah, for one mutual aid. So,
professional.
So this is November the 2nd. Mutual aid that was requested. Right here, 108 officers running on the list. It's a lot of officers. The total for November 2nd was 590 officers. This is not counting O.P.D. So this is just a surrounding area. Mutual aid is a system. It's a statewide system that goes all the way up to the federal government. And it's a way to mobilize and combine police forces here in the Bay Area just alone. It's very scary, and some of the things I looked at with mutual aid is that the agencies that are used, some of these agencies you wouldn't even think have a police force. Okay, so this is the region. This is a different. So far I showed you the city is the first step in mutual aid. If the city needs mutual aid, they call it the operational area, which is the sheriff of Alameda County in charge of Alameda County. That's just one part. So we have regions. So the regions in mutual aid are made up of these operational areas. They're made up of different counties. Okay. So there's 7 regions in the state of California, and the one Alameda County is called Region 2. So a region is a mutual aid region is a geographic area comprised of multiple operational areas. A mutual aid region manages and coordinates information and resources among operational areas within the mutual aid region and between the operational areas and the state level. To facilitate coordination of mutual aid, the state of California is geographically divided into 7 law enforcement mutual aid regions. Each mutual aid region is comprised of multiple operational areas and has a regional law enforcement mutual aid coordinator. So these are the regions that the mutual aid regions are breaking into. This is actually the one that we're in. If you look right here, Region 2 is comprised of 16 counties, 151 cities, and the total population of the county that in the region that Alameda County is about 8 million. So and so whenever you have a regional area of mutual aid, each county they vote for who's going to be in charge of this regional area. And actually, the one for whole Region 2 for that whole region, Alameda County, is the head of that. So on behalf of the governor, the Secretary of State, and this is a state level mutual aid. right here. So, on behalf of the governor, the Secretary of the California Emergency Management Agency, through the Chief of the Law Enforcement Division, has the responsibility for coordinating state law enforcement mutual aid resources in support of local jurisdictions during times of emergency. So, state law enforcement, they can be used at any level of mutual aid, all the way down to the city. Things like California Highway Patrol. It's a long list of state agencies that can be used in mutual aid, which I have on the next slide for you. So this is what really surprised me about doing my research about mutual aid. So whenever it gets to a point, emergency is significant enough to call a state, which can be used at any level of mutual aid. These are some of the resources that they have. Like the California Department of Consumer Affairs, it has 56 sworn police investigators. California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has 1,900 officers and 1,500 people in parole agents. So what really surprised me about this is that if the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation responds to a mutual aid, their COs, the correctional officers, have actually the same rights as a peace officer. If you look at this website, it's like a commercial for mutual aid. They like, use us. We have buses and stuff that you can use. You know, it's like a big commercial for police officers, right? So California Highway Patrol is another state agency that has 7,800 peace officers. California Department of Justice has 500 peace officers. California Department of Forestry and Fire has 350 officers, 80 fire arson detectives, 5 firearm technicians. California Department of Parks and Recreation has 650 peace officers / rangers. California Department of Insurance has 205 sworn peace officers. California Department of Alcohol Beverages Control has 239 peace officers. California Department of Fish and Game has 305 peace officers. Even the Department of Motor Vehicles Investigative Division has 240 sworn peace officers. And all these officers can be used for any level of mutual aid and called on to do so. So mutual aid is a system that can mobilize almost every law enforcement agent.
California Department of Corrections has 19,000 officers, and the Parks and Recs has 750
There's some facts about mutual aid that really stuck out to me that I think everybody should know. The state and local law enforcement, they can receive assistance with funding, equipment, training, intelligence info, and personnel through the Emergency Federal Law Enforcement Assistance Act. It's not to be a routine source for criminal justice activity. So if the city of Oakland right now says that they need help with this emergency that they got going on, Occupy Oakland, Oscar Grant, anything, Loma Prieta earthquake, that there's tons of different avenues they can go through to receive federal funding, training, equipment for this mutual aid that they ask for. It's not to be like used as a way to just keep getting funding, but if you look recently, they just got a $10 million grant for 25 more officers. So next fact. Go back to previous.
Just right click.
Right. And then go to previous.
I can't see. Come here.
Previous is the same.
2.
There you go.
So, the proclamation of local emergency is not required before requesting law enforcement mutual aid. So it doesn't have to be an emergency for Oakland to request mutual aid. They can do it prior to anything happening. They just think that a situation is going to get out of hand. They can already put a request in for mutual aid, and it will be on standby. Unless otherwise expressly provided or later agreed upon, the local law enforcement official or jurisdiction requesting mutual aid shall remain in charge. So despite you see all these police come in for mutual aid from surrounding areas, the city of Oakland is the one in charge unless it's somehow figured out before that they won't be in charge of that. And the next one I have is like actually a rule for mutual aid, a policy. So the integrity of responding forces and the policies and the procedures of their departments must be maintained. So if Emeryville police come to Oakland to help out with mutual aid, there is supposed to be a policy that they keep all the Emeryville's policies and procedures. They're not supposed to go outside of their rules or their policies. So let's see how they kept it on the second 25th. So O.P.D, this is O.P.D crowd control policy violations. As many of you may know, O.P.D is facing numerous lawsuits for violation of a crowd control policy that was reformed by a federal judge, Judge Henderson. So this is the beginning of the crowd control policy. If you haven't read it yet, there's numerous copies online. You can find Oakland Police Department's crowd control policy. And I only picked out a few violations that are so plain, but I guarantee if you read it, you could probably go through it and find hundreds and hundreds of violations. They don't keep their word, and they don't keep this crowd control policy at all. This is just, I guess, for show. The Oakland Police Department policy regarding crowd management and crowd control is to apply the appropriate level of direction and control to protect life, property, vital facilities, and maintain public peace in order and to uphold constitutional rights of free speech and assembly. It is the policy of the O.P.D to use minimal reliance on the use of physical force and authority needed to address a crowd management or crowd control issue. So that's the beginning of their policy. So these are just a few, very few violations of their crowd control policy that I could pull out. So on the right here is quotes I took out of their crowd control policy. So direct fire, SIM, which is specialty impact munitions, may never be used indiscriminately against a crowd or a group of persons, even if some of the members of the crowd or group are violent or disruptive. So when they discriminately shoot rubber bullets at you or throw tear gas, they're violating this crowd control policy. The next one I have is members, they shall not discharge a direct fire SIM at a person's head, neck, throat, face, left armpit, spine, kidneys, or groin unless deadly force will be justified. So if you've seen people get hit in the head with rubber bullets, the kidneys, anywhere, that's against their crowd control policy. They're only supposed to do that if deadly force is needed. And that's almost never in a First Amendment protest. Okay, so this is non-handheld crowd control chemical agents like tear gas, shot out of guns. They had handheld ones, and there's a whole section on stuff they can do with handheld ones, but I chose to use speak about the ones that they shoot out of weapons. Okay, so the crowd control chemical agents shall be used only if other techniques such as encirclement and multiple simultaneous arrests or police formations have failed or would not accomplish the policing goal. So they're supposed to use tear gas as a last resort after they tried many things like encircling you, showing force. Usually that's the first thing they do when they come. Members shall use the minimum amount of chemical agent necessary to obtain compliance. So even when they use tear gas, it's supposed to be just enough to disperse the crowd. If you remember on the 25th, on the 2nd, the tear gas was all over the place, man. I looked at some of these helicopter shots of how much tear gas was used. You couldn't even see the street. It was just clouds and clouds and clouds of smoke. So they're supposed to use a minimal amount, even when they do disperse this tear gas. If chemical agents are contemplated in crowd situations, O.P.D shall have medical personnel on site prior to their use and shall make provisions for decontamination and medical screening to those persons affected by the chemical agent. I know people that were personally out there that they said they still smelled it in their clothes and it was affecting them in the shower 2 weeks after this happened. So it's the policy of the Oakland Police Department. They're supposed to have medical staff on site to treat people when they get hit by these agents. I haven't heard nothing about them having that or doing that. That's just some ways you can see how they violated their crowd control policy. So right now, the ACLU, in accordance with the NLG, they have a lawsuit just for those 2 days. They have lawsuits for protests that happened in Oscar Grandchild and many more. November 14th, the American Civil Liberties Union and the National Lawyers Guild filed a federal lawsuit against the Oakland Police Department for violations of its crowd control policy. November 17th, the ACLU and the NLG, they made a motion for a temporary restraining order preventing excessive use of force by the Oakland Police Department during crowd control situations. This motion was denied by the judge, Richard Seaborg. He stated that these events were sporadic or isolated violations of individual protesters' rights are insufficient to support a broad injunctive relief against an entire agency. This judge seems like an asshole. So it's very imperative that we support these type of cases being brought against O.P.D. Because they have a crowd control policy that they're specifically violating people's First Amendment rights. 2 more motions were also filed. One is to join this recent crowd control lawsuit with the former judge who actually enacted this crowd control policy, Judge Henderson. So I don't know what the outcome of that motion was, and ongoing oversight. So another seeking financial sanctions against 2 officers for covering their name tags during one of these protests. Officers that's against their policy is to cover their names. So whenever they're out here doing mutual aid or trying to do a crowd control, they're supposed to have their names visible. So they're actually trying to bring some financial sanctions. That sounds like some money, paychecks, you know what I'm saying? For them covering their name tag, maybe that'd be a deterrent for them to break their policy. So the federal, this is actually, I believe, a picture from 2003, the anti-war protest that happened. So I mean, this one stood out to me a lot. O.P.D's crowd control policy, it was reformed in 2003 after a violent repression and anti-war protest. This Judge Henderson, who was over this federal lawsuit, has threatened to put O.P.D under federal control and failed to complete reform. So I mean, that's a good reason to support these lawsuits, because it's going to show that they're failing to, complete this. And I want to talk about one more thing that I didn't have a chance to put on my PowerPoint, but there's this thing called the Bay Area Joint Terrorism Task Force that the Oakland PD is involved in. So even on top of this federal oversight that we're getting from judges, the federal government is still very involved with the police department, and they don't have no oversight at all. A police officer, they assign police officers, regular sworn police officers, to these Joint Terrorism Task Force that's headed by the FBI. These police officers, they're supposed to keep with Oakland policies. They're not supposed to go outside of the policies of the Oakland Police Department, even when they join this Joint Terrorism Task Force. Local restrictions against police are way more tighter than federal regulations. So when the police officers join these Joint Terrorism Task Force, they do all sorts of investigations against religious groups, against people who protest First Amendment rights violations. So it's very imperative that we look into this in the city of Oakland, what this Joint Terrorism Task Force is doing in Oakland. All the files for the Joint Terrorism Task Force is controlled by the FBI. To look at these files, you have to have high security clearance. You can't really get them. The city of San Francisco is involved in a fight right now to get civilian oversight of their Joint Terrorism Task Force. You have things called memorandums of understanding that allows, they're like loopholes to allow the Joint Terrorism Task Force to operate with impunity. The city of Portland was successful in renegotiating their city's agreement with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So now they only support their Joint Terrorism Task Force on a case-by-case basis. So, that's something that we should think about here in Oakland. If we have a Joint Terrorism Task Force, maybe we should look at it at a case-by-case basis to see actually what they're doing there. Thank you.